Fortunate to have with us today one of the most foremost experts on church-state legal matters, Professor Marcy Hamilton, who holds the Paul Verkyle Chair in Public Law at Cardozo Law School of Law, Yeshiva University. Professor Hamilton frequently writes about constitutional issues, and her latest book, Justice Denied: What America Must Do to Protect Our Children, was published by Cambridge University last year. Professor Hamilton has served as a constitutional law counsel in many important clergy, sex abuse, and religious land use cases, and has testified before numerous state legislatures advocating elimination of the statute of limitations for all childhood sex abuse. Marcy?
Good morning, everybody. This is really a landmark day because this is the most diverse group of supporters for child sex abuse victims that I've ever seen in the United States. Yeah. And I thank everybody for being here. Markey is my hero, by the way, so just so you know.
Mine too.
Yeah. If we thought of it 5 years ago when we kind of started on this journey, I would have thought of naming this act, which is now being introduced in a number of states, the Hidden Predator Act. That's what it's about. How do we know who the predators are among us? We have 2 states that have already instituted what turned out to be the only method we've got to identify the hidden predators: California and Delaware. Between those 2 states, we now know over 360 predators that we didn't know about before. If you think about each predator having numerous victims, we have now protected thousands of children. There is no reason for New York not to step into the vanguard on a national movement that is inevitable, because it's just. The only opposition to the Markey-Duane bill is the opposition that wants to keep secrets. And so this is an either-or choice. You're either in favor of this approach and finding out who the predators are, or you are opposed to this approach and keeping those predators' secrets for them so they can keep abusing children. It's very simple. It comes down to an either-or choice, and that's all there is. I have worked for years now trying to figure out how to protect children in our society. This is the only method that has been successful in recent years. We're in the midst of a civil rights movement for children. The legislators that we have here today are my heroes. They're the people who are going to take us to a new era when children are not property and children's worries and concerns are not irrelevant. And that's what this bill is about. It's making children people. Finally, there's been some concern about, well, what about false claims? Because we always are concerned about the adults before we ever think about the children. But this bill has a provision that does not permit a claim to go forward unless there is a certificate of merit from a mental health professional that testifies to the facts and the veracity of the victim. If you have a certificate of merit system, the concerns about false claims are minimal. We had a certificate of merit in California. There were very, very few false claims. But on the one hand, you had a few false claims. On the other hand, you had 300 new identities of predators you never knew about. I think this bill is a no-brainer, and those who are opposed to it have the obligation to explain to the public why they want to keep the predators' identities secret. Thanks very much. Chief Sparks can introduce him.
Our next speaker is Barbara Blaine, who Barbara will introduce the Reverend Anthony Evans and say a few words.
My pleasure. This is a photo of me when I was 12 years old. This is when my parish priest started to sexually molest me. I couldn't tell anyone. I was so scared, and I thought it was my fault. And by the time I was able to tell anybody, I was well into adulthood. And I did go to the police, who were extremely sensitive and kind, and they told me they thought I was credible. They said they'd even heard other allegations against the guy, but they said it was too late to do anything because of the statute of limitations. So it was sad and disappointing to me that I didn't get my day in court and my perpetrator got away with the crime. But what was devastating for me was to find out that even after I reported him, he still molested more girls, and he got away with it. I can tell you that if my mom had known back then that that priest was a molester, she would have kept me away from him. The thing is that the Child Victims Act that is sponsored by these courageous lawmakers that I'm honored to stand with, that bill will allow the moms and dads here in New York to know who the predators are, so that the kids like me back then, who are alive today, can be protected. The Department of Justice estimates that only 1 in 10 predators ever gets identified. The Markey and Duane bill will help chip away at that 90% that no one knows about and help identify them. And we're here today to just ask that everyone support the Markey-Duane bill and get it passed. Good going. I work with survivors of abuse by priests across the nation. We have just over 9,000 members at this time, and I can tell you that that my experience is common. Many victims go through the same thing. And recently, a couple weeks ago, I received a phone call that from an incredible minister from Washington, D.C. His name is Reverend Anthony Evans. And he contacted me and he said that he wanted me to know that the Protestant churches were standing in support of the Jewish and Catholic victims who were speaking out in New York. And I said that, I was excited. It was terrific news. But so we are very honored to have Reverend Anthony Evans. He is the president of the National Black Church Initiative, a group that has over 34,000 churches in the United States that are members of the coalition. And he's an ordained minister. He did come up from Washington, D.C., and he speaks on behalf of this large group. He definitely has a clear understanding of how public policy affects and determines the impact of these issues in our communities, and he's determined to preserve the moral authority of the Black church's voice in the public square. And I'm honored to introduce Reverend Anthony Evans.
Barbara, it is an honor to stand with you, and I'm here to offer our endorsement of the Markey-Duane bill here in the New York State Assembly, that it should be passed. And absolutely, I want everybody to understand that abuse against children is violence. And I do not represent a God of violence. And I want to make sure that the African American church, who have a history of seeking justice for everyone, stand with our children and stand with these victims. It is a shame that we have to fight even against the church on this issue. It breaks my heart. But nonetheless, if it takes the full strength of the African American church to get this bill passed, then you have it, and we will stand with you. Thank you very much.